You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, excursions, and more in one place. There are over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from, so you can find something for everyone. And Viator offers free cancellation and 24/7 customer support for worry-free travel. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Hi, podcast listeners. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. We have so many guests on this show making a difference in our lives, making a difference all around the world with the expertise that they bring. And yet so many of you are reaching out to me saying, you want more. It's not enough just what we're putting on these podcast episodes for you. And so I am here to extend a very warm welcome to you to our Difference Maker community, where you can join for as little as $5 a month to get all this extra content. Out the gate, you're going to get 30 plus minisodes of exclusive content not available for the regular podcast listeners, and an exclusive minisode every month. And you'll get exclusive voting power to help us pick podcast topics and more. And that's at our Changers tier. There's 3 different main tiers and then an extra larger tier. But whatever tier that you join at, you will be included in this extra content. And I know that many of you are wanting to go a little bit deeper. And so even though it gets a little wild in there sometimes because of how deep we go, I want you to join us there. This extra content is very special. It means a great deal to me to be a part of this community with you. And I would love to just exchange ideas or perspectives that you have around these different episodes. And that's the place where we do it. So please show up to our Difference Maker community. Give us $5 out of your pocket every month. And I think that you'll have a lot of fun in there, because we do. And I would love for you to join us. So go to patreon.com/A World of Difference to join us there. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Happy Women's History Month to everyone. Today, our guest is an incredible woman, Angela Proffitt, founder of GSD Creative. She's a productivity expert, a podcast host, a celebrity wedding and event planner, a speaker, an author who travels the world helping CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs grow their company brand. She has been working for over 2 decades, mastering business processes. She's been serving on a board for entrepreneurs. She has a psychology degree, which helps communicate all her techniques and helps people get a lot of stuff done. She's been in People's Magazine, Success Magazine, US Weekly, many organizations that she's helped. I met her at PodFest in Orlando and went to her session and was just so impressed with the work that she's doing. I'm really honored that she's coming on the show today. She's been through a lot lately, and she's going to probably talk about that in this episode. So welcome to the show, Angela Proffitt. Hello, Angela. A very warm welcome to the A World of Difference podcast today. They're in Nashville, Tennessee. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. It was so fun meeting you at PodFest in Orlando, and I'm so glad we made this happen. And for those in my audience who've not heard of you before, they are so in for a treat, but I'm sure there's some of them out there that already know who you are and are excited to hear a little bit about Angela Proffitt. So my first question for you is just tell us who you are, what your background is, and how you got started in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's a story, it's a journey, and it's still going. It's a roller coaster. But the quick version is grew up, pretty normal life, mom and a dad. My dad worked, traveled. My mom didn't, but my dad didn't have really a normal job. He was an undercover detective for the railroad, and you don't really know how dangerous it is. And so as I grew up and thought, I had a pretty normal life, and then moved off to college, and I loved people. So I was like, I'll be a nurse because I love people. But then I started to learn that I was a very sheltered child. And I didn't really know what the real world was, right? Until you like move out of your hometown. And I'm like, these people are crazy. And they weren't crazy. It's just I wasn't exposed to a lot of those things. And so I had a lot to learn. College, I hate school. I hate school. But college taught me more about life than it did about school. And I very quickly learned that I was not going to go down the nursing career. And I worked in a morgue. I didn't know it was with dead people, but I was a gymnast, and I had this relationship with this lady I taught who was 30, and that was like so old back then. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to be that fit when I'm 30. And she's like, we have this job opening, and I know you're in nursing school. Would you like to come and work at the front desk to like get some experience? And of course I said yes. Like I looked up to her. And then it lasted 6 months. But I did get college credit for it. But with all that to say, I ended up with a degree in psychology and worked in a mental hospital and an AIDS clinic and then the morgue. And so it seems a little morbid, but it wasn't my forever path, but it taught me so much about people. And I'm so grateful for all of those experiences. But it takes a very, very special person to really stay in mental health and want to help people when there's no end goal. And I realized that the older I got, now it like clicked one day where it's like, that's what this is. I have to have a long-term, I can't do this long-term thing with no date. Like I need an end date to something. And my family had a wedding venue for 35 years. And so I just grew up around like weddings and events in the summers. Like it was 8 hours away. Those were our family vacations. And, I'd pour sweet tea and cut the pie and the wedding cake for people. So me and my sister started doing weddings for fun in the Catholic diocese. And so we had our real job in healthcare and then had this fun wedding planning business. Y'all, this was way before social media. Facebook did not exist. Pinterest did not exist. House did not exist. None of these things existed. We cut things out of magazines and made a board like we were in kindergarten, but it was fun and it made people happy. And there was an end date. And so after about 2 years, people started to say, I'm not Catholic. I want to get married here. Can you help me? Like you helped my friend. And it was so organized and it was pretty. And so then that turned into, I'm not getting married in Nashville, another state. That turned into, I'm getting married on a private island, which I didn't even know existed at that point in my life. So it's just, and this was all before social media. And so still to this day, I go back to what my dad always says, like, you do what you say you're going to do, regardless. It doesn't matter. Like your word is your word, and you communicate that. And so that's really been the foundation of everything that we've done. But that's where I got my start in the wedding and events industry. And I still have an event company. I'm not that involved anymore because there's a bigger purpose. And, you can only do so many weddings and go to so many countries and islands. And it's not about the stuff, and it's not about, all these luxury things. They're like, people spend $5 million on a wedding. And I'm like, it's the most important day of their life until it's not. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have the purpose, bringing it full circle. My purpose, it wasn't there anymore. And so, I still own it. And I still oversee it. And I have a great team who's much younger than me. And that is their purpose right now. But we have different seasons in life. And when I feel myself getting bored and being called to something else, which now social media is that calling where people are asking questions and they need help and they confide in me. And so again, there's a bigger purpose. And so that's what's gotten me where I am today, like the quick version. I'm an entrepreneur though, and I love being part of the entrepreneur community. And Chris, who was the founder of PodFest, which is how we met, we're both members of the entrepreneur organization and EO. And we met during COVID because we were on a Zoom with Damon John from Shark Tank. And I looked at his signature and he looked at my signature and he's like, you have a podcast? I'm like, yeah. He's like a COVID podcast? I'm like, no, dude, since 2017, we've never missed a week. He's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I have a conference. I'm like, what? It was just so funny because we're so busy. We don't slow down and pay attention to our own community sometimes of what they're doing matters and what they're doing is important. And we can learn how to really spend our time better if we slow down and we're still and we're aware of like the good things around us. Long story, but
Love
sum it
it.
up.
No, I didn't know so many of those parts of your story. And it's so, I think sometimes first impressions with people, people might think that because you're bubbly and fun and pretty and extroverted and you dance on TikTok and you bring a lot of joy wherever you go. There's just happiness follows you. But there's so much depth, like working in a morgue and studying psychology and the grit and the grind of entrepreneurship and all of that. Like, I love that you embody all of those things. And there's just so many layers to you, and there's so much to get to know, which makes for a super fun interview today. So thanks for starting us off like that. Yeah.
Sure.
But you have, this company, you have a podcast, you've traveled the world, your purpose has changed over time. But you've always been sort of a person that has tried to get things done, right? And your productivity, and you're doing a lot of things around that. Tell us about your concept of your company, GSD, and what inspired you to start that particular part of it.
Well, again, every company and every big thing that I end up being a part of, and when I say big, I don't mean like revenue. I mean like impact wise, comes from a really deep pain point. And so, and you see that right away, in us talking, for 5 minutes. But you're right. Like people don't take me serious. And again, I'm so used to it that it's funny. Like we make fun of it now because they're like, oh, you're this short little blonde and da 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 da. And I play the part and I love it. But when it comes to like business and matter and purpose and all of that, I'm in my 40s. And my God, if I had someone telling me back when, I sound like my mother or my grandmother when I was your age, but shit, it's true. When I started, we didn't have consultants. We didn't have mentors. We didn't have podcasts. We didn't have books. We didn't have Audible. We didn't have YouTube. And it's really lonely. It's really, really lonely to talk. So everything that I talk about, everything I teach, every company I'm part of comes from a pain. And so 3 days before college graduation, and this is me graduating, like done with clinicals, so excited to get out of Pensacola, Florida. No offense. I was living in my uncle's condo in the beach, and I thought it was going to be so cool, and I had sand in my bed every night. It was not cool at all. And they're just real behind the times, for someone who's like 20 years old. It just wasn't the hip town at all. And there were like no good dance clubs. And you know how good, or I love to dance. Like,
yes,
and I was a dancer. So people were like, oh my God, you didn't have anywhere to go. Anyway, if TikTok were around back then, y'all, I would, just be dancing for a living probably. Anyway, I went off on a massive tangent. Sorry. I'm really good at that. I have ADD really bad, but I did remember. So my pain point. I'm so close to graduation. At the time I went to UT Knoxville, and it was still kind of foreign, but I wanted to get out because I was so bored, and I wanted to live on the beach because I thought it'd be so cool. And it was free because it was my uncle's condo who owned the wedding venue, and it was like 3 hours. Anyway, my computer crashed. And I lost everything. So here I go to sit down with 2 reams of paper, probably be like 1,000 sheets. I had to mail this notebook to my professor back at UT to graduate. And I go to do it, and I open an email from a friend. Now, this is like towers back then, and like the big ass monitors. And then all these cuss words popped up all over my screen. It's like it was yesterday. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? I go to the yellow pages, an actual phone book, and I'm looking through, and I find it's like the computer doctor. And so I call and I take it in. The first thing he's like, honey, you didn't back up with the floppy drive or a floppy disk? Or I'm like, what's that? And so he's like, well, let me see what I can do. And I'm crying hysterically as if my mother just passed, like unexpectedly, like hysterical, because I was never taught not how to react. That's what you don't learn in school. But because I worked in psychology and I had been in the mental hospital working for only 6 months at the time, I tried to control myself, but I couldn't. And it was terrible. And he, I'll never forget. I'm like, I need to know. I have to mail this. And I emailed my professor, and he's like, Angela, if I don't get the notebook, honey, you're not graduating. I'm like, oh, F this. Like, I'm graduating. So I stayed up, for 3 nights straight and just redid everything. And made up a notebook, and got in because I'm like, I'm moving home. Like, I don't like it here. And so I did graduate. But let me tell you what I did. I went to Walmart and I bought I bought 50 floppy disks, and they were all color coded. And then they were all labeled, and I had everything backed up. And then jump drives came out, and then time capsules came out, and then hard drives came out, and then Dropbox in the cloud, and Google Drive. So all these things in tech, I was the first on board, the first girl. And not only because of that, like, things come in threes, bad things in waves, bad things, as I put in air quotes. My car got broken into like 3 weeks later at the place I was working in broad daylight.
Wow.
My planner was stolen. Now that planner, not only am I like, at the time, very type A, more OCD. I'm not really type A, but I didn't know that till I was like 30. And that's what made me much more happy anyway. So my car was broken into. My planner was stolen. It was a planner my parents had gotten me with my little monogram. I'm from the South. And I didn't know what if I was coming or going, because my to-do list was in this paper written planner that I got so much gratification from crossing off every day, but not rewriting the things the next day. So again, everything I do now and teach time blocking comes from these painful things. So I learned what an online calendar was. So I was the first to do any of that stuff. But so when I started my first business, a legit business, like with taxes and employees, I'm like, we are going to be paperless. We're going to use this thing called Dropbox and Google Drive. And this is why we're going to use it. And my accountant and business manager, when I finally hired someone, they're like, what is this? Like, you don't use paper at all? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like with EMR, electronic medical records, because again, I was in healthcare for a little bit. I helped thousands of doctors get all their paper charts over to electronical charts. And this is when the government was like, we're not paying your healthcare bill or we're not going to pay you for your services if you don't get the things in this cloud thing. I saw the power of how a nurse can hit one button and it goes to the pharmacy. And then the people are like, where's my script? They're like, I'm getting older. I'm just forgetting. And they're like, no, Mr. Jones, you just need to go. You don't need any paper. So I helped them through all that only because of one thing I'm actually going to show you of this little psychology tool that I used in healthcare, which helped me really break through to some of our patients. I mean, come on, I was 20, but it's like, would you talk to a 20-year-old? But again, I learned so much. So all from that pain, people are like, oh my God, you're kind of like crazy about technology and like all these new things. But all that comes from pain. And so, yes, I am the girl who would rather have apps and all the new things in tech than have clothes or shoes or a purse or anything. Give me that and my hip hop music and I'm good. Like I just need my Apple stuff and I'm good. So and again, that's a whole nother story why I moved to Apple products from PC products, because I kept getting viruses. And so finally it was so hard. It was so hard. But some of my friends were like, you have to do this, Ange. I promise it's going to change your life. It changed my life so much that fast forward a few years, we did a joint venture through the Entrepreneur Center with the local business, the local Apple stores. There's only 2 in Nashville. And we have a great relationship with them. And I go into their stores, and this is all prior to COVID. I used to teach free classes for entrepreneurs. I mean, I had a beautiful relationship with them. But when they see me walk into the store, they know something's really wrong. Because usually I can figure it out. I mean, literally, I'm the girl that goes and makes I used to make a ton of TikToks during COVID on how to better use your iPhone. There is so much unlocked potential in just from a productivity standpoint in the iPhone. If people will just take the time to do two things, watch the keynote every year if you have an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an Apple Watch, the keynote, this last one, in the beginning, they open up with the new watch, and they open up with all these real everyday people who the Apple Watch saved their life. And I'm like, I wonder how much their sales went up. I mean,
Yeah.
my mom already has one, but I'm like,
right.
I think I need to get my mom the souped up one too.
Right.
It's just, but it's like those stories, it just matters. And so that's why, again, when I'm like, oh, you don't have an iPhone, I can't airdrop things, I'm not looking at people different at all. I'm just like, you can't get that kind of a connection if you're not part of that brand. You just can't. It is what it is. And I still have friends. I mean, my own sister has a droid. But if you would ask me now, who am I today and what am I doing? Like all the things that I look back and like the companies and the brands and the weddings and the events and the conferences and the people, it's about the people. Like that's the most important thing. It's not like, yes, I've been in great situations, been in not so great situations, but you learn how to better react when you realize, oh, this situation really isn't that bad, because 5 years ago when our whole town flooded and we had 8 displaced weddings, COVID, pandemic, nah, we got this. So it's like, but then my girls in their 20s, they're like, what are we going to do? What about revenue? And I'm like, do you even know what revenue means? Like gross and net revenue? Because I didn't even know what that meant until I was in my 30s. And I was flying blind, in a business for 10 years. I really was. And that's when I got a mentor through EO who was like, what are you doing? You have a pet product company. You've got a wedding business. You're doing this. And so, we have to get our arms around our time. And so again, all of the things that I teach now about my whole brand is like, be present, is because I've lost people that I love. It sucks. And it takes a very painful thing. The reason I lost 100 pounds recently, let me be clear, I was a gymnast. So I was, my weight fluctuates, let me say that, but COVID was the worst. Yeah. And so, the people who came into our community online before, they're like, oh my God, did you have surgery? Like, no, there's no magic pill. There's no surgery. There's no nothing. You have to do what science says if you want your body to be healthy. Yeah. And movement is the foundation of everything. I never planned on doing anything with TikTok. It was a joke to get my nieces to shut up so I could do Zoom meetings during COVID when I was helping homeschool them. I'm serious. And so I'm just like, they're like, you're going to dance with us? I'm like, of course. And now they'll say that, say this to me, but they're like, how can you, you're really fat. Like you can't dance. Like, I grew up a cheerleader. I grew up dancing. Like that is what brings me joy. And you know why? Because it brings other people joy. And so I like stripped myself from all that joy, from working so much and allowing everything to just take over when you're your worst enemy. It's like no one's putting all this pressure on yourself, but because when you're an overachiever and you want to do all these things, but when you take a step back and then people start dying around you, it's like, well, where do I really want to spend my time? Because now they're gone and we're not going to get that back. So that's why I'm all about time blocking and being more like work-life balance. If you would have said that even before COVID, I would just be like, oh, F that, like whatever. But I'm a completely different person. Like my whole team, they've been with me for a long time. And I didn't really have any empathy before. Like I was, just a hard ass. And I still kind of am, but like I want to have fun with it because I want people to feel good when they're around us, when they're working with us. We all have stressful things, but you never know what's going on with somebody on the other side of the table.
So true. And you lost one of your clients recently. And I know that's still very fresh for you. And so this definitely speaks into that. How are you doing? How are you feeling? And
sucks.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Actually, yesterday, my best friend Marco Polo'd me. And she's the one that taught me about Marco Polo. It's so funny. It's like I'm like really good friends with the right hand like the owners in Marco Polo, which is one of my very favorite apps. And we've been on them about getting like an affiliate link. And, my team is great. They're like, we're not going to talk about this too much unless we have an affiliate link. And I'm like, no, it changes lives. It's how I communicate with people all over the world. Yeah. It's actually the only way I communicate is Marco Polo. But she Marco Polo'd me last night. And I've had all my notifications turned off since the night that happened. Because I'm so close to them and I'm shocked. Because I'm like, how am I a psychologist? Worked in a mental hospital. And we've worked with them for 13 years. And I've gone on the road with them. I've traveled with them. Their wedding was the very first wedding I did on a private island. And then we're like flying in on this little plane. And they're like, oh my God, let's get married in the middle of the ocean. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. but we did, like, there was a big sandbar, and I mean, it was the most beautiful spiritual thing I've ever been a part of. And so, I mean, I have my theory of what I think, happened, because it's just so out of character, but nothing has been released. I don't normally like if people go on my Instagram and TikTok, like, y'all, I'm not a crier.
Yeah.
But especially it's just so sad because, my mother's like, why didn't he ask for help? Like, why didn't he I'm like, Mom, no. Because my mother's the one who called and told me. I don't watch the news. In fact, I was like taking an hour break because I'd been working so much that Friday night. It was Friday night ago. And I come upstairs, and I was like, I'm going to hang all my pictures up on my wall. They've been laying up here for like years. I'm not even kidding. I just wanted to get them up. And one of the pictures hanging on my wall now is them. And my mom called and she's like, are you home? I'm like, yeah, why? My mom always asks me that, like, because I travel so much. And so when I'm at home, she's like, are you home? I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, what are you doing? Which is all normal. I'm like, well, I'm actually taking an hour break because I'm getting dinner and I'm going to hang some pictures. She's like, hang some pictures. I'm like, yeah, I need to do something where my brain doesn't need me to think. So that's just, and I just want to use a hammer. I mean, I was being funny. She's like, honey, Kyle, took his life. I'm like, what? Like Kyle Jacobs? She's like, yeah. I'm like, no, Mom, you have the wrong Kyle. And she's like, it just came across the news. And right when she said that, it's just like my phone went off, people texting and Marco Poloing. And, I just sat down on my treadmill underneath my desk, at my treadmill desk. And I'm like, how? I don't and so that, you just can't function for a little bit. And so I did no work. And my best friend, she's like, you have to get out of bed. And she's like, let's do a TikTok tequila night. So I'm like, okay, I'm really not in the mood. I have so much work to do, but like, that's what best friends are for, right? I'm so glad to move back to Nashville, even though I'm not even here a lot. Actually, she lived in LA for 20 years. And so anyway, it's just, so I actually went over there and spent the night with her and, slept in my clothes as if we were in college or something. But it's just things affect you differently. And so I wanted to make a video. I actually made a few videos about Kyle that I sent Kelly, and I posted one of them. And, of course, the media picks things up. And so last night I turned my notifications back on because I just needed a week of like just prayer and faith by myself without media. And then, all the notifications start coming back in last night. And I think that he's such an amazing person. He is. And he is the rock for everybody. I am the rock for a lot of people. And I know how heavy that can feel if you let it get there.
Yeah.
That's what family therapy is for. And I love family therapy, and I would recommend it to everybody. And I would probably be dead or in jail for strangling my nieces if I didn't know how to handle some of these things that not only is just death hard, unexpected death is even harder.
Yep. And
then something that could have been prevented, perhaps, is the hardest. They say, it's hard being overweight. Well, it's hard being fit. You have to take the time. It's hard having allergies. Well, it's hard eating the right food. So you figure out what is causing all of this, these rashes and pain. There's so many layers to things, but like, what I don't want people to do is judge, because you don't know. And I haven't, again, online, it's like the people that don't know the people, they were as real gets. Let me tell you, they had their show on CMT, which I've never watched, by the way. I don't even have TV, much less cable, but I've never seen it. And so, I just know them as just like we're talking right now. And so it is, it's heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. And the thing with me is, like, when I don't understand something, and if I think I could have helped prevent something, like, I'll take it personal. And I don't know, so I was going back through my last text with him the other day, and we were texting back in May. Like, we usually text around like their birthday and their anniversary, because it's on New Year's Eve. So it's not hard to like really forget. And, he's like, we've got to get back together for dinner. And like, I want to meet the guy you're dating. And, and it's like, we were both traveling. We're all busy. And we never took the time to do it. And it just sucks. But thank you for
Mm.
asking. And, again, the best thing, you never want a negative viral TikTok or reel, right? And not that I want a viral reel of me crying, but it's real life and it's a
Yeah.
problem and people need to talk about it.
Mhm.
And that's again why I'm such an open book when it comes to just like life is hard, but it can be so much more happy if you learn what your priorities are and you learn how to time block and segment all of your activities. 80% of the time it's an 80-20 thing. But that's how I do operate and keep happy and positive and doing the things I love and carving out the time. If you say yes to something, make sure you're present. And again, I've been saying this ever since my dad died, and we kind of shifted my brand from being paperless and technology. Someone died, I get a little bit more empathetic, right? So these things, I almost died of COVID. My primary care doctor's like, you're overweight. You know how to get back in shape. I don't know what the hell you're doing with yourself, but how can you be productive and motivate any of your team to be productive when you are a mess personally with your health? And she was right, and I mean, I'm friends with these people. So it's like they genuinely care about me, which I
Right.
appreciate. It's the mentors and the consultants and my EO forum family and my travel family. And it's the people all along the way that make the difference and make it worth keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that from you. Like in person and even on this interview, you care for people. And I love that part of your story. I think it is making a difference. I think you are making a difference by working on yourself and also helping others have tools in productivity, helping weddings, all the things that you've done using psychology and understanding that. So you showed a little book earlier, and I remember you talking about this on the bus at that event after Podfest was the
Yes.
true colors. Yeah. You want to
Yes.
give us a little snippet of true colors and why that's so important to you?
Yes. And this is the funniest thing. So it's like I can't even make this stuff up, but I'm going to show you. So in TikTok, like I was waiting for this. So whenever this comes out, I have 535 drafts. It's terrible. Okay. But I can't get rid of it's like they're tagged to certain things. And we're doing a case study for me, getting more healthy. And I like to show that, right? That it doesn't happen overnight. You don't gain 100 pounds overnight. And again, I never thought I would make this part of my business pillar ever. We totally took the software piece and the tech piece out and replaced it with wellness. And it's so much better because it's personal, where half the time we're trying to help employees and team members understand technology and software and they don't give a flying F. They're like, my dog is dying at home and,
Right.
and I'm sad, and it's like some of them would, tell me things. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like does anybody know this? I'm just like, but people are almost afraid to like tell. Anyway, I
Yeah.
have this really fun TikTok of us all on the bus and I'm going to post it. And I was like working on the text. I'm like, once we get through the podcast, cause that's what I do. I like, meet people and then we collaborate, we do stuff. And then I hold on to some of them so that I can, promote these podcasts. Anyway, so True Colors, there's 4 personalities. Listen, any personality profiling is a wonderful tool. They're all awesome. In fact, oh my God, Kyle is the one who gave me the Enneagram book.
Really?
Roughly 13, which I made a video on that, but I haven't posted it yet because now I'm afraid what the media is going to do and like quote me in. So just like, okay, I'm just going to hold off a little bit. But this is another very impactful story. I know I keep going off on tangents. I'm so sorry, but he handed it. So, and this is why I do this with every couple. I do this with every client. I do it with every vendor, every person that I'm going to do business or communicate with. I need to know how their brain is wired. Now, there are things you can do, like go look at their Pinterest ID, and based on how their Pinterest is A, organized, and B, you can very quickly find a pattern. I'm not a good reader. I'm dyslexic. I'm severely ADHD. I've never been as a child, I was never clinically like treated. I just got in trouble a lot.
Mm.
In fact, I just framed a picture that when I was 4 years old, this kindergarten teacher like wrote a letter about me, and my mother pulled it out of her treasure chest recently and gave it to me in a piece of notebook paper, and I framed it. I'm like, every single thing on that list is 100% who I am today, except one thing. And it was reading, because my mother took us to the library and read to us all the time. I never really had to read, and I wasn't pushed to read, but I wasn't good at it. So we avoid things we're not good at. And, and so I'm very dyslexic. And so that's another reason I don't do email. People are like, oh my God, are you too good for email? You have a full-time assistant answering your email. Well, that must be nice. No, I don't read well. I don't retain. I want great, perfect customer service. I expect perfect expectations. That's what our clients expect. So when I'm going in for a client, I expect the same thing. And unfortunately, and this is why I have so many wonderful opportunities with hotels and resorts now, I go in as a secret shopper, and I take note of all the lacking company culture things like this that are missing. So, and then I do a podcast about it, and then and it helps the hospitality community, right? And I would never bash anyone. This isn't about bashing people or looking for things for wrong or being rude or complainful. It's like, you never know what's going on behind the doors with some of these things. But as a previous wedding planner working with some of these properties, I know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And going back to Kelly and Kyle, their wedding on Jumbie Bay, at the time, the brand was Rosewood, which we still have a phenomenal relationship with today. I was just emailing one of the girls this morning from Rosewood, Madrid. I'll be there in a few weeks for a conference. And she just... Anyway, they're like, how are you so happy? You're like the most normal wedding planner we've ever worked with. By the way, you all are control freaks. Like, you're batshit crazy. I'm like, it's not that. It's just no one slows down to communicate based on personality. And there's this thing which they sued me in 2013 for plagiarism, which I was just trying to help my industry. I didn't know that I had to pay to be certified. And anyway, I paid to be certified, and it's all fine. They actually became my client during COVID. We built all their online training. Nice. So anyway, things come full circle, but there's 4 personalities. And if you have a business, it's essential. So Enneagram, it's numbers. Kyle ended his first engagement because of that book. And he said, I never would have met Kelly and married the love of my life. He saw her on TV on American Idol and told his mom, I'm going to marry that girl one day. And, it's like, when you are intentional about these things can happen, but you have to stay focused on the goal. And so I shared this with the team at Jumbie Bay, and they're like, can you stay and do some consulting? And in my head, I'm like, what's a consultant? Literally. I'm like, I don't even know if I Googled back then. I mean, it was so long ago that, I was 13 years ago. But so I did this with them. And then, I did become certified, and I teach this all over the world. It is the foundation of communication. And so when you don't have all 4 personalities, you have gaps. So I'm just really high level. This is from 1978. And I only know that's the year I was born. So Don Lowry, who founded this company, which, remember that name, it's important. It's my next story. I'm full of them. These are so freaking hokey, right? I mean, outdated from the 80s, but it works. It works in a different way than Culture Index, Enneagram, Strength Finders, Myers-Briggs, which, by the way, he worked with the Myers-Briggs mother-daughter for this. It's different. They're all different. This is a team building activity. So we did this in group therapy when I was leading / really learning what the hell I was doing with my life in therapy with, working in the hospital. But when you don't have this and you don't know how to unleash the power of your people based on the way their brain is naturally wired, you're missing out. You're missing out, and you have major gaps. So you've got blues are the empathetic, sympathetic. These are like your nurses, your customer service. And let me back up. You have all 4 colors, but you have a strength, or it's not strength and weakness, high and low. It's brightest and pale, and you have an order to it. And so 24 is the highest. I'm the highest in one of these colors, and 6 is the lowest, and I'm the lowest in one of these colors. So you have very drastic people. But when I learned about this many years ago, I was the complete opposite. And then when I got out of healthcare and went full blown, entrepreneurship, I'm jumping ship. I jumped ship for Kelly and Kyle's wedding to go on and go on tour with them and do a TV show on TLC that never aired because they pulled out to go do their wedding on a private island. So again, there's just so many massive, major life shifts that I had with them that it's
Yeah.
just, it makes me so sad. But these are your people that are excellent at community, and they get their happiness from other people. You have to know that. And so going into a Blue, asking how their weekend was and putting a smiley face in an email and simply hugging them or like patting them on the shoulder. They need affirmation. They need that to be happy, and they need it to function. But sometimes Blues, going from, you have attributes and you have reframing, and, for people who are not blue, it's like, oh my God, they're so dramatic and they can't stand it. And, you just have to be aware.
Yeah.
The golds, they're our GSD leaders. They get shit done, not German Shepherd dog. And the goals are the type A's. They take accountability. Like my right hand, Amanda, who is like, I mean, I can't function when she's on vacation this week. And like, there's a lot going on this week. And I'm like Marco Polo, I need to text her. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But she knows, like, emotionally, I'm a wreck. I'm a wreck. Okay. Let's just be honest. So, she's my gold, and without the gold, shit don't get done, period.
Mhm.
When you've got a bunch of oranges in the room and we're full of ideas, we are full of them, and we have so much fun, and we walk out of that room and nothing gets done. So, however, working in healthcare, I was a trained gold. So I started out as a 24 gold because if I didn't chart for my patients specifically, their bill would not get paid by their insurance.
Yeah.
And then it would come back on me, and they would, and that would obviously upset me. So I learned how to be so detailed. I didn't know, years later, I would be running and managing millions and millions of dollars of people's money for events and weddings. I didn't know that I would be part of coaching people who are starting startups to help the hospitality industry. I didn't know these things. So everything happens for a reason. But without this gold, you're never going to get anything done, and nothing's ever going to get finished, and things are going to fall through the cracks. Now, they're not your risk takers. They're not outwardly proactive. Like that's a learned skill. So like Amanda's excellent at being proactive, but that's because I ask. And sometimes golds feel like they don't have a voice. And I'm not saying she said that, but if you go and ask people in the workforce, like when I go and interview some of these people and, kind of like make friends with them, because again, it's all about the people. I'm there to help them be better in their role to make their life better at work. We spend more time at work than we do at home. Greens are, these are the analytical people. They value research. They value time alone. Okay, that's very important. Time alone. They always go to them with the facts, always. And this is me, like orange. Just these are your entrepreneurs. These are the people who cannot sit still. They look for opportunity. They want to make impact, and they will fall on their face 50 times and get up and do it 100 more times because that's what drives them. And they need variety. So, how these can work together in marriages, and again, we've done thousands and thousands of weddings. So, these two in the first marriage, when you're married the first time, and if that's not the only time, perhaps this is why. I'm not saying it is, but just consider it. Opposites attract. And so, in love, especially, a lot of people get married when they're young. In fact, I think it should be a law in every country. You can't get married till you're at least 30. Because come on, let's be honest. Do you really know who you are at that point? And some people are still figuring it out. Shit, I'm in my 40s. I'm still learning things, but these two people need each other in the beginning of starting something new together. And the reason is because the golds take care of the oranges, like crazy, erratic behavior. Like we have bills due. There's a deadline. We have wait, what do you mean we need to go to bed right now? Because we have to get up at 6 a.m. Like what? It's just like but I'm a potty trained orange, which is very important. I'm a potty trained orange because like we have really, in my office, I never want to, no one is ever less than. All four colors are equally important across the board. But when you don't have all four colors, you're missing out, because if you don't have the right mindset, which, when I was in my 30s, I didn't. I wasn't open because I was so into building, scaling, because that's what I was being taught.
Mm.
And, so when you take a step back and look at what do you really want? And no one had ever asked me that until I got a mentor. Like, what do you want? Why are you doing all this? Like, what's the end goal? I'm like, what do you mean? Anyway, so, but the goals are really, if I say this is a goal and we're going to do 25 events this year, no more, we're going to do this many. And we have to pre-qualify people. Again, it's not that you have to have this and you have to have that. It comes down to business people. And if I didn't have people to run all of that, like I would be bankrupt. Like
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. That's why I don't do the numbers in my company. You need to keep up at least once a month. In fact, before this podcast, I was on with my accountant for 3 hours because it's close to tax season. And we were talking about my dyslexia. And she's like, you're actually doing so good. Like, I'm proud of you. But because I've made mistakes in the past and got letters from the IRS, you learn to outsource. So I need this person to function. And so when you start to recognize how the strengths of someone else can actually help you, then annoy you, your life will change. And sometimes with the golds, like I love taking my team on trips. They don't like traveling as much as me. So when I, like one year I'm like, oh, we're all going to go to Cabo and it's going to be so much fun. And to me, that was kind of like their Christmas bonus. But then when they didn't get the money, they're like, well, what, so again, going back, not everyone values travel like I do. Especially the golds.
Yeah.
Especially the golds. Okay. So you have to take a step back and understand what drives people, and what drives you doesn't drive them. And so guess what? That trip didn't go the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And that was my fault because I had these expectations of them acting like me and like being as excited as me to be at the beach. Like, and one of our girls, like, she doesn't like the beach. She's kind of allergic to sand, which I get it. I'm allergic to a lot of things. I'm not making fun of anybody, but it's like, I didn't know that because I never effing asked. I didn't even ask, like, would you want to go to the beach? Do you even want to go on a trip with us? We just assume a lot.
Yeah.
And if people don't go to therapy, they're not going to make it. They're not. And lives are miserable. And then these two attract. And, I really, really loved this couple. I actually hadn't done True Colors with them yet. We were at a tasting with the bride agreement and her mom, and he was like late. I'm talking like 15, 20 minutes late. And when you're doing a tasting for a seated dinner with a dual entree with like prime rib, and like, you don't want to be late for a tasting. It compromises the quality of the food, and the chef's freaking out. And, I'm like, it's okay. I'll bring it up when he gets here. It's no big deal. And I've never met him. He comes in and he's like, what are we eating? I'm starving. And she's like, well, did you have lunch today? He's like, no, I had 13 meetings back to back or something. Like, he was like, I'm busy. I haven't eaten all day. He was very agitated. And, she's like, well, I fixed you lunch. I mean, you took it. There was a Post-it note that said, I love you in it, have a great day. And he goes, I told you I loved you when I asked you to marry me. And if I change my mind, I'll let you know. And then he just turned and looked at the menu card at like, what are we eating? Yeah. And I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. And I'm just like, okay. And I stood up and I put my hand and I was like, hi, I'm Angela Proffitt, your wedding planner. It's so nice to meet you. Like overly obnoxiously bubbly, right? Now I know I'm an orange. I'm self-aware. I knew immediately he was a green. There's nothing wrong with greens. In fact, without greens, again, I would not have a company. So when he's asking, well, how much does that cost? And how much, what do you mean we need phone chargers at our wedding? I'm like, no, it's a plate. It's like a charger. It's like your plate, your dinner plate goes on top. It's like a decorative item. He's like, do we really need that? I'm like, it's a luxury wedding, like in a really, yes, you're not paying for it. So it's not your problem. Like, you just need to like the food. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. None of this stuff matters. Right. But I never want anyone to feel like I don't want to take the time to answer their questions, but I don't, because it's not a good use of our time, because it just doesn't matter. And that's what I used to think. So now, instead of dealing with people like that, I put those personalities together so they can work together, which sometimes does this. It's actually kind of funny because the greens, they have all the numbers and all the data and all the analytics, and they out research each other. And even like some investigators we work with, like for private investigation stuff and like background checks and stuff, even if the case is closed for something and they hadn't found the answer, they will keep digging on their own time. And then the blues don't want to make any decisions on their own. They cannot make a big decision to save their life and feel good about it. So the greens do all the research and they make all the decisions and tell the blues what's going to happen because this makes the most sense. It's not about money. It's about quality for the greens, and it has to make sense. And they ask questions. And I used to really not like people like that. But then I really quickly learned that the events that we plan and design, the crazy stuff we do, it's because I have a lot of greens on my team and operations, and they ask a lot of questions. And I always have weekly update meetings with them. Well, Zoom, COVID changed a lot. And so, but without this little tool, I don't know who I would be. I really don't. I don't. It's everything in my life, and that's one of the workshops that we do, and that's why we teach it, because it's so impactful for me. And that's it again goes in full circle with Kelly and Kyle and me getting the opportunity to work with a brand, Rosewood. And they're not big in America, but they're one of the most luxury brands in the world. And their customer service and their brand story and their brand loyalty is really beautiful. And it serves our clients. And that's what matters. It makes it easy on me when you have the right support and the right team. People are like, oh, I don't want to get married in a hotel. I'm like, why? Because the Knot told you that it wasn't a good value. Let me explain to you the difference between labor and me bringing in 253 people for your 1,000-person event versus at a hotel where we can make things look beautiful, spend way more money on design and decor, and have the labor and the help and the people who are already trained really well in this one space. So it actually makes a lot of sense because it's hard to throw out 1,000 people. Now, it doesn't always make sense. Again, you've got to know what you're doing to know where to guide and direct people, and like, where do you want to put your money, kind of thing. So long answers.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. Thank you for explaining all that and taking the time to do it. Obviously, it helps you understand people. You're bringing all of your knowledge throughout your life into your work. And so that's very helpful. I'm sure there's some entrepreneurs listening that are going to want to reach out to you for or follow you or learn more about it. So thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. And we will link all your stuff in the show notes. Where's the main place you want people to go to find you?
Yeah, just angelaproffitt.com, and it's 2 F's as in fun and 2 T's as in time. And I just want to thank you for all that you're doing too, because when I met you and I went, and I like, not that I go stalk everybody, but I'm like, okay, there's like, usually I walk away with like 5 people that I just really connect with. And, you came up and talked to me after, I think I was talking about affiliate marketing there. And then, we were talking to the bar, and then we were on the bus, and, here we are. So it's amazing. You've got to come and be on my podcast, and share more about your story and what you're doing, because it's incredible with what you're doing too.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Angela. And we will send people your way in the show notes. Everybody reach out to her and follow her and learn from her. She's got a wealth of knowledge and wisdom through many years of experience as an entrepreneur. So glad to have you on the show today, Angela. Take care.
Bye.
I just really appreciate how vulnerable Angela was about her recent loss. I feel like sometimes in some cultures, we have a really hard time with grief and expressing that. And I read an article this week in The Atlantic where a man was talking about losing his teenagers, and people just didn't know what to say. And they would say things like, there's just no words. And I feel like we may feel that we don't know what to say, but it's just so important to listen and sit with people in their grief. Shortly after I did this interview, I lost my dog, our precious family dog, Coco, that we brought from Singapore, a rescue dog, to live with us here. And she's been with us for most of my younger twins' lives. We have 3 teenagers now, but our youngest 2 who are in high school now, they don't really remember much of life before her. She's been a part of our family for a decade, and we think was around 16 when she passed away. But we, shortly after the interview with Angela, had to say goodbye very suddenly, and it was just extremely hard. And death is difficult. Grief is hard of all kinds, whether it's a pet, a close friend, a family member. And there's levels of intensity in each of those that are more intense than the others. Grief of losing a place that you love and having to move across the world and say hard goodbyes. There's just a lot of grief that we want to sit and hold space for here. And I'm so glad Angela just was vulnerable about that, because I think that it's one of the ways that she can, as a business leader, show her human side. And clearly she loves people. Her understanding of psychology from her undergrad is very, very helpful as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who invests in other entrepreneurs, sits on boards and goes around the world consulting people, even in the hospitality industry and the wedding industry. And she's a beautiful soul, and a lot of layers to her that are just very deep. And I really appreciated getting to know her. She's smart, she's business savvy, and she's good relationally with people. And I am not a TikTok person, but between her and my teenage daughter, I felt like I should sort of give it a try, but even though I still sometimes hate it. But going to her session at PodFest was very insightful, and we kind of had some just super silly times on the bus waiting for people after an event to get on the bus. And anyway, and Angela's just brings a lot of happiness around her, and just her big smile and all that is just really contagious. So glad that she could be on the show today. Glad that if you hadn't known about her, that you could be introduced to her. And if you're an entrepreneur just starting out or needing some help, definitely follow her stuff and check her out on her GSD website. We'll link all that in the show notes. And if you're experiencing grief of any kind right now, please reach out to us in our Patreon community. We're going to be going a little deeper with her on our exclusive episode there, and we'll have some conversation around that a little bit. But I know this is a season of Lent for many of you that are experiencing we had Ash Wednesday recently. I myself went to a local Anglican congregation on Ash Wednesday and got the ashes put on my head. And it's just, I had no idea. Then a few days later, we would be experiencing a little bit of that in our own family, that from dust you came and dust you shall return. I'm very contemplative about all of it lately. And I loved Angela's message that we don't know how much time we have with people. So hug people that are near you, that you love. If you're not a hugger, if that's not your culture, shake a hand or do a salam, whatever, besito on the cheek, whatever your culture is. Just show people in your life that you love, that you care about, that you love them. We just don't know how much time we have. I'd love to hear about any great things you're celebrating in terms of life and love and relationships, but also we're here to hold space for the hard stuff too, and to sit with you in that pain. So reach out to us in our Facebook group, or especially in our Patreon community, which is where we go a little bit deeper. You're absolutely welcome there. We'd love to have you. It's only $5 a month, and it's a special place. So please jump in and let us know how things are going regardless, in all our socials. Reach out to me on Twitter if it's at the place that you brave to go these days. Anyway, have a wonderful week, everyone. Next week, we have a special guest coming on. My friend Angela McKinney Tim will be talking about her recent visit to the Supreme Court for the ERA, where she presented a statement on behalf of Justice Revival, the board that I sit on with her, that she leads as executive director. And she'll be here to talk a little bit about that on International Women's Day. So that's going to be exciting. I myself will be out of the country starting this week, and we'll be there all next week in Abu Dhabi with my friend Shanna Mazer, who got Forbes 30 Under 30 this year and was invited to go to an International Women's Day conference, as I mentioned, and she invited me to go. So I'm very excited to get to be with these international women leaders from around the world. So if you follow me on socials, I'll definitely be posting pictures of deserts and camels and, fun gala events probably. And just, it's going to be a great time with seminars of learning about different ways women are leading around the world and all the experiences of being a woman and celebrating that. So anyway, lots to talk about next week, and tune in for Allison McKinney. Tim, you will not want to miss that. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. As we're finishing this episode, if you're thinking, I really wish I could learn more or go a little bit deeper, well, that's what our Difference Maker community is for. I would love to welcome you in to join the rest of us there. Once again, it's only $5 a month to join, the price of a latte at your local coffee shop. You can join at our Changers tier. Difference Makers is a community that really means so much to me. It's very special because each time I have a guest on the show, I record something outside of what we give to just the regular podcast audience, where we go a little bit deeper. And then I post those video episodes in this community and we can discuss them. But also at the very beginning tier, which is our changers tier of this community, you'll get exclusive voting power and help pick podcast topics that give us, more of what we want from your perspective. You'll have access to exclusive 30 plus mini-sodes that aren't out there for the general public. And you'll get every month an exclusive monthly bonus mini-sode. At our Groundbreakers level, which is $10 a month, you can join and get all of that, but also priority access to submit questions to the podcast. And you'll get an additional 2 exclusive monthly bonus mini-sodes. And at our Trailblazers tier, which is $15 a month, the price of 3 lattes a month, you can get all of that, plus also 3 exclusive monthly bonus minisodes, and a patron shout out. So I would love for you to join us at any of those tiers. It'll help you come into this community, be in the midst of all of us, other difference makers, and we'd love to hear your perspective. I certainly would. It's a place to engage more with me and the audience around what you like, what you're resonating with, and once again, go deeper with each of our guests. So please join us in this membership community. I would love to hear your perspective and love to share this extra content with you. So show up at patreon.com/a world of difference.